There are 5 of you, so there's technically a perhaps 6 of you. So you have a quorum if you wanted to get started.
Sure, that sounds great, Roberta. So good afternoon, everyone. This is the May 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Somerville Community Preservation Committee will be conducted via remote participation. We will have a video recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. So we have a few agenda items for this meeting. We can start off with the approval of meeting minutes. So I wanted to check with the committee members to see if you all have had the chance to review the meeting minutes and whether there are any comments, edits, any proposed changes.
I had one. I did not attend, so this is not like a change, but I noticed it was on what? Page 3, the 7th bullet point down regarding the existence of team facilities. Somebody said that there wasn't one, and I know if I was there, I just would have chimed in and said, well, Somerville doesn't have its own like Boys and Girls Club or teen center or what have you. The rec center does run team programs, and so like in my neighborhood, it's in Powderhouse Circle. That building was kind of repurposed into this teen center. Like it's been 2 years now, 2 school years, I should say. So not 2 calendar years, but it's been a great resource. It's for 12 to 18-year-olds, and my daughter aged into it right at the perfect time for her. So that's my only comment. Everything else looked fine to me, and I wasn't here to notice much, but that's what I noticed without even being here.
Heather, please.
Roberta, I was wondering if you could put up page 4, if you could share it.
Sure. Let me take a second to open it.
My question will be, once it's up, there's several bullet points that are sort of like kind of conclusions or around the budget, and I just thought it would be I have a question with one of them. I don't quite understand the intent, the way it's worded.
Okay.
But I also thought that it might be good for people to just have their eyes on that.
All right. Are you seeing it on the screen now?
Yes. So those top bullet points. Yeah. So the one that I'm wondering about is the second to last. It might be helpful to clarify and that's put into context by the bullet points in front of it. So maybe people just take a moment to read it. And I was a little confused by how that line read.
So this
So yeah, go ahead.
Where it says
so we're saying
go ahead.
Primarily for open space recreation and historic preservation projects rather than historic preservation.
Yeah, it meant to say rather than affordable housing.
Okay.
So that was a mistake.
Okay. All right, now I understand what we're trying to say there.
Yeah.
So do people agree with that as a kind of a summary bullet point? So it's building on the fact that historic recreation hasn't been awarded the percentage that it's sort of historically we believe it should be awarded, partly because of just sort of pipeline and grant applications. And so saying that was it really sort of trying to get at making sure that money is spent on open space? Is that what?
I think that the comment was because in practice, the CPC has been allocating the amount that they're going to give to housing first. And then everything that the CPC has had to manage after giving the housing funds to the Affordable Housing Trust has been going to open space, recreation, and historic preservation, because those are the applications that you receive.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a matter of reflecting what you've been doing in practice. And I cannot recall exactly whether I added that language to the plan or not. We can look and see if, in fact, I took that advice. Oops, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I do remember the comment now.
Mhm.
I think it was David. Okay. I understand now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments regarding the meeting minutes? Seeing none. Roberta, I realized that we didn't call roll to start the meeting, so would it be appropriate for us to call roll, and then I could ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes? Would that be
Sure.
okay? So
That would-
Roberta, would you please call roll as well
Yes. Jahan,
here?
Laura,
Here.
Heather, John,
Here.
Eric,
Here.
Rose,
Here.
Ryan,
Present.
Joe.
Yeah, and I apologize, my computer won't project me, so sorry about that.
Thank you, all of you. It's a full house today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Roberta.
Yep.
Now that we have called roll, I wanted to see if there is somebody who would be willing to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I can make
Sure.
that motion.
Good work. I'll second it.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, John. And Laura, would you please call roll Roberta?
Yes. Rose,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and Jahan.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Great. Thank you so much, Roberta. And we have meeting minutes. So just moving right along in the agenda, I think the next item is adopt the FY25 CPA budget. Now, if you may all recall, we had we had a pretty robust discussion during last month's meeting, and I know that there were some proposals or considerations that were being floated by certain committee members, and I just wanted to see if we can revisit the budget conversation. And Roberta, I believe you have a Excel workbook or
Yes.
a document up. If you don't mind sharing that, and we could just re-engage in that discussion.
Sure. Take a moment
you,
to share
Roberta.
the screen. So you should be seeing an Excel worksheet on the screen now. Okay.
Yep.
So
Yes.
this is a workbook that's going to that will travel with us through this entire funding round. So this is going to have all of the summary information that we use to track all of the grants and the budget throughout the year. So I'm beginning with a work page that shows the budget that the committee approves for this funding round. This budget is going to allocate the funding into each of the reserve accounts so that that's the amount of funding that can be used for each program area this year. So my understanding, and this is still up for discussion, my understanding is that on what's shown on the screen The proposed distribution reflects the conversation that the committee had last month, that you wanted to keep the same distribution that you've been using in recent years. So I've calculated what the FY25 estimated budget is going to be. The surcharge amount is $3 million, $3,022,005. And the state match of previous year's revenue is unfortunately lower than the state match that has been in recent years. The state has, the Department of Revenue has instructed us to assume that the match is going to be 14.4% this year. That could change by the end of the year, but this is what we've been instructed to use for an assumption. So the combined revenue for this year would be $3,436,205. So I've taken this figure and I've apportioned it to each of the program areas and to the administrative operating account according to the formulas that that we agreed to use. And then we're subtracting the estimated debt service for the historic resources, which was the debt service for the West Branch Library and the Community Housing Reserve. There are now 2 projects that are reflected in the debt service for the Community Housing Reserve. This includes the 100 Homes Program initiative that was a $6 million debt, and now the $4 million bond for the Clarendon site is reflected in this. So the estimated debt service for both of those projects combined is $589,000. So subtracting the debt service, this column shows the total that would be available for the program areas. Any questions?
So thank you so much, Roberta. I think it's helpful for you to frame our conversation, our discussion regarding what's available. I do want to mention for the benefit of my fellow committee members, one item I was thinking about was the admin and operating expenses of the committee. It's currently 5%. And keeping in mind the inflationary environment and also some of the outreach goals we have around marketing and also supporting the efforts of the committee, both from the outreach perspective, but also from a expense perspective. We wanted to see if the committee members thought that the amount, whether we look at it from a percentage basis or the actual dollar amount, whether that's also appropriate. I just want to get some thoughts, some comments, and any feedback.
I should just mention that the 5% is the maximum that the CPA legislation allows us to use. So it is open for discussion, but 5% is already the maximum level.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying, Roberta. Now, if the full amount is not expended, can you just share with us what occurs then?
The amount left over each year that is not expended for administrative purposes is rolled into the undesignated fund, which becomes available for projects in future years.
Great. Thank you so much, Roberta. So I'm going to open up the matter for discussion. I just wanted to highlight the admin operating expense side of things as well. Does anyone have any thoughts, comments about the proposed distribution percentages that we have listed here?
Roberta, if I may, any indication where we're going to land on actuals this fiscal year on the admin budget?
So I did do some analysis of the admin budget, and I don't have that in the front of my mind right now, but we have consistently spent less than the amount that is budgeted by probably somewhere between $60,000 to $90,000. So that $60,000 to $90,000 has rolled into the undesignated fund each year.
Understood. Thank you. So that does give us an opportunity, assuming this is a similar number to what we had in the previous fiscal year. We do have some number to some room to grow our expenditures in the event of inflation or just wanting to do more, additional outreach versus previous years. We could do that without changing this budget is more or less what I'm understanding, right?
Yes.
Understood.
That's a very salient point, Ryan. Thank you for raising it. Wanted to see if anyone else has any comments, thoughts.
Well,
Yes,
first,
Laura.
thank you, Roberta, for breaking it down. It's, with the numbers and the percentages, it makes a lot of sense. It's very clear and it lines up with our discussions, I think quite nicely. One comment I had is, I guess, I didn't realize, how big the housing reserves debt service was. So that's like a big chunk less than, I realized, but so be it, right? That was the decisions we've made as we go. But it all makes a lot of sense. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. So Roberta, just wanted to get a better sense. I know you mentioned the SU match is 14.4%, and this, and it's hard to, I recognize that it's hard to project out, but based off of anything that you may have seen or heard, do you have any other background information to share around this percentage? Is this kind of this seems to be a reasonable estimate from what I understand, but are there any possibilities that the number may end up trending higher, or do we need to be worried about the number being lower than even what's listed as a SU match?
For this year, I think that we'll be safe to use the state match that was recommended by DOR. We may have, as typically happens, we may discover in the fall that there was a greater revenue than was estimated in the spring. And what we've done is to give a share of that additional revenue to affordable housing to make sure that we maintain the 50% affordable housing designation. And the remaining will continue to be split between open space recreation and historic preservation, without having to actually put it into those reserves. So we may anticipate that the revenues will be higher this year than were projected last year, that the FY24 revenues will have been higher. We'll know by this fall if that's the case. But we can, we have to make conservative projections in the spring, and hopefully not so conservative that it limits the revenue that we're able to use this year. However, if we do underestimate, that additional revenue will roll over and we'll be able to use it out of the undesignated fund in the future.
Great. Thank you so much for the background information, Roberta. I think that's going to be very helpful for my fellow committee members as well as myself as we consider the proposed distribution, not just from a percentage basis, but also for a dollar amount perspective. So thank you for that. Are there any other comments, any other questions, any other discussion points? How does everyone feel about the proposed distribution percentages? I know we had some robust conversations previously. Are we coalescing around this proposed distribution, or are there any alternate proposals that any committee member would like to share with us?
I'm good with keeping it where it is. I think it seems to make sense. I'd rather be pleasantly surprised than unpleasantly surprised.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I would support that as well. I'm comfortable with this proposal the way it is.
Thank you, Heather.
I'm also in support of this distribution.
I am as well.
So
Thank
I
you,
would,
John. Rose. Sorry,
I would
Roberta, please.
I would suggest that a committee member might make a motion to recommend the budget as is presented on the screen.
I can do
So
that.
okay, I'll second.
Great,
All right,
thank
then
you.
I will stop sharing and I will call the roll. John,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Jahan.
Yes.
All right. It's unanimous. The motion passes.
Great. Thank you so much, Roberta, and thank you, fellow committee members. So I think we can move on to the third item on our agenda, which is the annual review process for FY25 funding round, including the review of the draft FY25 CPP. Roberta, would you like to share and present?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. So, oh, I think I'm sharing with you the agenda. I'd like to share. Do you see the?
See the minutes.
We see the
Okay.
minutes, right?
That is not what I wanted to share. All right, so I'm going to stop the share. Actually close the minutes. Draft minutes. Oh, I see what happened. I thought that I had, my apologies. I thought it was a Word document, but it was a PDF. Okay,
No problem at all, Roberta.
share screen. I'm working on one small screen tonight. Okay, so I have on the screen, you should be seeing the preservation plan. So for those of you, if anyone looked at the plan over the weekend, you might have seen an earlier version. I updated it, I think, on Monday. So the update highlights that we're celebrating 10 years of CPA projects in Somerville. It's an exciting anniversary year. So I think it's an opportunity to highlight what the committee has done over 10 years. So I have added also a page to the introduction, which is a one-page highlight of all of the accomplishments of the Community Preservation Act program. And this also serves as a one-page summary of the plan. So the plan talks about what we've done, what we plan, what we intend to do moving forward, and what has been the impact of the program overall. So highlights of the plan are that celebrating 10 years, we've spent $35 million in this time. We look at the financial distribution between the program areas. And then there are bullet points highlighting the accomplishments in each of the program areas. Starting with preservation of the tower at Prospect Hill. We've also, the most significant historic preservation projects have been to make upgrades to community buildings, including installation of elevators in several buildings and life cycle upgrades at the Elizabeth Peabody House, facilitating safe and accessible indoor spaces for nonprofits, public services, and community uses has been identified as an essential community need. With CPA funding, major improvements have been completed at Winter Hill, West Somerville, Brown, and Healy schoolyards and the Allen Street and Hoyt Sullivan playgrounds. Planning and design are currently getting underway for Kennedy Schoolyard, and CPA has helped to expand and design new open space at Glen Park, Luann David Park, 217 Somerville Ave, and Junction Park, and the construction of a new multi-use path along the Mystic River, which also entails expansion of Blessing of the Bay Park. The city is in the process of preparing a new open space and recreation plan to guide open space and recreation priorities for the next 5 to 7 years. And finally, the CPC partners with the Somerville Affordable Housing Trust to administer CPA funds for community housing. About half of CPA funds have been spent in this category, including $10 million bonded to support the 100 Homes project, should be initiative, and Somerville Housing Authority's Clarendon Hill redevelopment project, as well as adaptive reuse of Mystic Waterworks for low-income senior housing. CPA funds have contributed to the creation of over 100 affordable housing units and the support of rental assistance programs administered by partner organizations, such as the Somerville Homeless Coalition, Somerville Community Corporation, and Community Action Agency of Somerville. So the CPC anticipates approximately $2.5 million will be available to spend in all 3 program areas in FY25. And then a description of the CPC. The CPC distributes CPA funds through a grant application process to which city departments and community organizations and individuals can apply. Application instructions are available on the CPC's webpage. The committee includes representatives from all of the boards that you represent, as well as 4 members of the general public. Somerville residents can apply to serve on any of these boards and commissions and help to decide how CPA funds will be used. So that's my plan summary. And then the next,
One quick question.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes.
The 2.5 million at the bottom of that page, isn't that 3.5 our budget we just approved?
The budget that we just approved is 2.5 million is actually available to the program areas.
But 3.5 including housing.
3.5 includes estimated debt service, which is 721,000, and the administrative and operating expenses, which is 171,000. So that leaves 2.5 million left that's available. I'll project that budget again. Actually, the budget is in the plan.
Or maybe just to that sentence, add a little kind of add on to that sentence, something about like the 2.5 for all 3 program areas, a total of 3.5, including debt service, or, something like that.
Okay. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Heather. I think Ryan also has his hand up. Ryan, please.
Yeah, thanks. First, Roberta, I think this is brilliant. This is the type of message we should be screaming from the mountaintop all the time as a group. So I think this summary is awesome. So I have one nitpick and one recommendation. The nitpick is on the same sentence that Heather's zeroed in on. I might add the word something like approximately 2.5 million or wherever we land in total will be available to spend. This the first time I read this, it sounded like we had 2.5 in each of the 3 programs. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Yeah, it certainly would. And then the other thing, you have some good numbers elsewhere in this draft regarding the number of housing units supported by CPC dollars. I would throw, if there's a space that makes sense to you, I would throw just even one count of the number of housing units supported by CPC funds over the years. I know that sometimes can be hard to quantify, but I think the numbers exist elsewhere in this report. And I think that could be helpful to really drive home how impactful these funds have been, even if they represent a small percentage of the capital stack of each of these projects. Those units might not exist if it were not for these funds coming in. So just a recommendation. Overall, I think this is fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Right. So I definitely agree with Ryan regarding the affordable housing area because it's helpful to quantify that simply because Roberta, and I agree, you've done a fantastic job of providing this bulleted synopsis, and you highlight the key projects in the open space category as well as how preservation in the preservation area. So I think with affordable housing being such a large component, I think it's going to be helpful for the reader slash audience to recognize the impact of the funds when it comes to the Affordable Housing Trust. Just wanted to see if there are any other thoughts, comments based on the synopsis provided by Roberta.
Just one additional comment. When you talked about the open space and recreation plan, you said 5 to 7 years, and it's just 7 years.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Very helpful, John. Thank you.
All right. I will maybe quickly skip through the plan and stop at places that I think merit further discussion. So the first few pages provide background information that I think we've discussed in recent meetings already regarding the revenue history, long-term, last year, and the specific projects that were funded in this past year, the way that the funds have been used in the last year. And just the comment that had been made, let me increase the size of this. I can barely read it myself, so I'm sure you all can't read it either. I honestly don't recall where I landed on the point that Heather asked about from the minutes about whether we mention that the undesignated, the flexible funds are typically spent on the 2 program areas, not all 3 program areas, even though they technically could be used on all 3 program areas. I described the budget that we've just discussed. So had we changed it, I would have changed it in the plan, but this is what you've just passed. And then more background information about the allowable projects. And then we get to the Community Preservation Act priorities. I have made no changes to the first section, which is the overall priorities. But for each of the program areas, there are some updates reflecting changes in the last year. So thank you to John, who helped me to make updates to the open space and outdoor recreation section.
And Roberta, I'm thinking I should have sent you some photos, some like newer photos, so I'll send a few your way.
That would be great. Yeah, I like the photos that I have, but we've looked at them several years already, so it might be time to refresh them.
Yeah, I'll grab you a few.
Historic resources. Not only I got some great input from some of my colleagues, Sarah White and Melissa Woods, who both helped me to make some of our description of the city's historic resources more accurate. And I think that's mostly what's changed in the historic preservation side. I also added this statement, which is information that I learned in the course of the consolidated plan process, that the city has further undertaken several needs assessments in recent years that highlight the importance of indoor spaces for recreation, youth, senior programming, childcare, and community service organizations, and arts and cultural activities. And I have referenced those plans and reports in the footnote. And the findings were echoed in the public engagement for the 5-year consolidated plan. In the current real estate market, the availability of affordable and accessible space for nonprofit and public uses is highly constrained, and many existing spaces are at risk of being eliminated. And that's, I think, the most significant alteration to the historic section from previous years. The community housing section, we've updated some of the data throughout the section, but the most significant update to the community housing section is related to the Affordable Housing Trust just completed its new 5-year strategic plan. So I used the 5-year strategic plan to draft an update to the community housing priorities. So these priorities are now completely different from what we reflected in the previous plans. And echoing the critique that Rose has often made, I wanted to make sure that it's clear that whatever the priorities are stated in our plan, we're still trying to not complicate this funding resource. So we are making our own priorities in accordance with the needs identified with the Affordable Housing Trust. My hope was that the language suggested that the Affordable Housing Trust is making the first determination, and that our expression of priorities is simply intended to reflect what they decide. And if that's not sufficient, I stated that the CPA funds may be used for any purposes consistent with 44B. So this is not meant to limit the use of CPA funds. It's just meant to be an inspiration and criteria to help us think about the CPA funds, and really not to help us think about the CPA funds, but to help the Affordable Housing Trust. So anyway, the community housing priorities that I've stated are the first 4 come directly from the Affordable Housing Trust strategic plan to create new housing that's permanently affordable to households at 100% of area median income, with an emphasis on serving households earning below 50% of area median income. To take advantage of opportunities to make investments that will yield affordable units with a relatively lower cost per unit. To support equitable distribution of housing opportunities citywide, and to develop assistance programs that do not result in overcrowding or displacement of residents. And then the last 2 priorities, I felt that it might be useful to throw these in. They're reflecting what the priorities that were expressed in the city's consolidated plan. So these are to serve the needs of at-risk populations and to prevent and mitigate homelessness. So I'll come back, I guess, to this discussion after I just finish quickly running through the remainder of the plan. The section 5 is plans for ourselves, for myself as your staff person, and for the committee to think about your operations and procedures over the next year. And in this, I mentioned the establishment of the subcommittee to expand outreach and engagement. And I reflected on bullet points from previous plans to think about what have we already accomplished and what are some things that we're looking at trying to accomplish over the next year. And the stakeholder engagement section we talked about at length at our previous meeting. And we also talked about the last section, which is the status update for all of the projects. But I just wanted to highlight for you that I did receive and put in your meeting packet a couple of outstanding annual reports that were provided by some of the grantees who hadn't turned them in time for our previous meeting. So with that, I would love to ask for your comments, questions, and suggestions.
So thank you so much, Roberta. I think that this draft document looks terrific. I mean, it has a good mix of descriptions as well as charts, tables, and graphs that really provide both a mix of qualitative and quantitative provide qualitative, quantitative understanding for the reader. I was wondering, besides using this, using the information in this report, do you think that there might be relevant information that we could use in other future CPC materials, like brochures or any other types of marketing materials, anything else that could help drive the point home? I know earlier, with the bulleted list, I think that's a fantastic synopsis of everything that the CPC has been able to accomplish using CPA funds. So I'm just trying to think of ideas of leveraging this, all the hard work that you've put in, all the updates that have been made here for other purposes as well.
Absolutely. The one-page synopsis, I hope, really captures what we'd like to communicate about what's in the plan. And I will also use this plan as documentation that I submit with our annual budget for City Council. And I will send out a newsletter after the whole budget cycle is completed to make an announcement about the updated plan. So I hope that this is useful information both for the public, our grantees, and other city staff, as well as I hope that this provides some context that will be helpful for them to consider what kinds of projects they want to bring forward using CPA funds. So I appreciate your encouragement to share it as widely as I can, and I would take any suggestions that you have for how we can go beyond that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Roberta. Just wanted to see if fellow committee members have any thoughts or comments that they would like to share.
I would just add, or like to say that I think, Roberta, that you did a great job capturing the context, because that's really important. And in terms of bringing in new project ideas, that background is useful. I guess I'm a grant writer by profession, so I just really gravitate to those details and know how important they are. So I appreciate that. And I would second what Jahan said about trying to repurpose it, and maybe it has to be condensed or whatever. If we need to come up with something a little shorter and sweeter, but it's really nice that this is already there. We won't have to reinvent the wheel. And I'm thinking with my outreach committee member hat on, because this is you did a great job with the summary. I mean, the summary there could just be it's the basis for some promotional materials for the committee as we go out there and take them down.
Thank you, Laura. I was thinking the same thing. I didn't want to preempt the topic, but as your fellow outreach subcommittee member, I think that we could certainly leverage some of the key items that Roberta's put together, and maybe you could serve. And this may be a conversation for the subcommittee meeting, but we could certainly use the synopsis to really familiarize some of the folks that we're contacting as part of our outreach efforts. Absolutely. Any other thoughts, please?
I just would echo, I think it looks great. really nice and concise.
Thank you, Rose.
I have nothing to add to it. It looks like something you've worked on for a number of years, as you have, and it has covered all the bases and then some.
Great.
So
Thank you so much,
I-
Eric.
I would add the same thing. Am I freezing? I would add the same thing, that I think it's a really great document, and it's beautiful as well as informative, and you did a great job on it. I thought page 24 in particular was one content about community outreach, about sort of our goals as a board. And just something, I don't know if tonight's the appropriate time to put it on the agenda, but it seems like that's a really good touchstone to kind of pull up that list and really strategize around how are we going to get there, and not let it get lost in this document.
Mm.
It would be appropriate tonight to consider, I don't, without spending too much time, just to consider whether the bullet points on this page reflect what you aspire to do over this year, and then we could come back to it and talk about how at a
Yeah.
future meeting. The top set of bullet points are the findings from the program evaluation, which was carried out by students before I came on board in 2021. And even though it's a few years old now, I still think that it was a helpful critique to keep in mind. So until I run out of room on this page, I figured I would keep using that. So we note the transitions that have taken place, and then the the next two lists of bullet points are really kind of what it is that we're trying to do right now, which is to increase public awareness of CPA through public engagement and signage, recording, oh, this is a typo, recording preservation restrictions, conservation restrictions, and other grant conditions, updating and improving application materials and other documents, assisting applicants and grantees with navigating CPA and City of Somerville procedures, providing strategic support to city departments and community applicants for identifying and initiating projects and identifying shared goals, broadening applicant pool and encouraging a range of projects which will have equitable benefits, tracking leveraged funding from other sources, and promoting broad recruitment and efficient process for committee appointments. So these are things that we have worked on and have accomplished a lot, but still have some work to do. Right, and maybe I'll just finish reading the other list and then I'll come to your question. In addition to continuing these activities, the following goals are for the next fiscal year: improving the promptness of signing contracts and paying invoices, increasing engagement with underrepresented communities and highlighting stories of BIPOC communities through CPA projects, leveraging CPA funding to address community needs through stakeholder partnerships, and exploring a revival of the historic preservation plan. Ryan.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Pardon my ignorance. What does it mean, recording of preservation restrictions? Is that actually like legally recording legal documents?
Yes.
It does. Okay.
Yes. So for projects that entail major historic preservation improvements, we require a preservation restriction as a condition of the grant. And most of our grantees at this point, they've been recorded, but when I started, going back to the beginning of the program, we had been requiring them and had several in progress, but it as a multi-year project to get them actually written and executed and recorded. So we finally got the first batch of them recorded within the last 2 years. And I have Mudflat Studio, I'm in the process of getting that drafted. It's not yet in the process of executing it, but
Okay.
it is a process.
So this is actually something that you personally have been doing.
Yes.
Understood. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So when we develop the preservation restrictions, we hire a consultant to draft the historic preservation, the historic description of the building and the criteria, the requirements that will be applied to that building as a result of the preservation restriction. And we have a template of a legal document. And so I knit the two together and negotiate with the state, who has to approve the document before we can have it executed. So I'm at the negotiation stage right now with Mudflat Studio. And conservation restrictions are required if the city acquires property. Actually, anytime the city acquires property using CPA funds, a long-term deed restriction is required as a condition. And so we've done that once with 5 Palmer Ave. And so any other time we acquire property, I have to go through that process as well for the open space asset.
Thank you, Roberta. I do have a question
Along
regarding,
those-
oh, please, Heather.
Along those lines, there wasn't an update from the Adams House. Do you have one for the committee?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
You're coming in a little choppy, Heather.
Okay.
That's so bad tonight.
Heather, perhaps if you go off video, it might help with the audio. It appears that Heather's frozen. Okay. I think, Heather, can you hear us?
I'm back.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
Please.
The question was whether or not we had a Adams House update.
Adams Magoon House.
Yeah.
No update. I'm still working on obtaining the appraisal that I need to be able to move forward with the property owner. I know it's been inexcusably long, my not having the information that I need to be able to pursue the appraisal.
And some of those expenses, like the legal expenses or the appraisal or this or that comes out of this administrative fund, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And that's one of the differences between the administrative fund, the undesignated funds, is that you can spend them without it going to city council for a vote.
That's correct.
And so when we say something like explore the revival of a historic preservation plan, is that something that could be funded from administrative funds?
Yes. So in the past, back in 2017, we used administrative funds to start a historic preservation plan. And for a number of reasons, that effort was never completed. And so the city still does not have a historic preservation plan. So in both of, when we talk about the affordable housing and the open space and recreation, I can quote needs assessments and priorities that were established through a planning effort for those program areas. But for historic preservation, there hasn't been an overall plan ever prepared for that subject area. What I do quote are some strategic plans that were for specific purposes, looking at the community space needs assessment, looking at the needs assessments for specific city buildings, but we don't have an overall citywide historic preservation plan. So that would be useful for the city to have. The historic preservation plan would ideally entail a combination of identifying assets in context and setting priorities that would be helpful for the CPC, as well as looking at regulatory tools and needs that are not relevant to the CPC. So to complete a citywide historic preservation plan, we would ideally have two different pots of funding that this is coming from, contributing funds from some other funding source so that it can be a complete plan while reflecting the proportion of the plan that is actually helpful to the CPC. And so that is something that we'd need to work with the administration and the Planning, Preservation and Zoning Division and OSPCD to determine how we could move forward with this element.
I'd be really because
I'm
I
sorry.
know we've had can you hear me?
Now I can.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, so I'd really be interested in reviving that, partly because I think our appetite for supporting private residential historic preservation projects, it has been, low. It's been on certain waters about how much of it we should do. And yet I feel like if we had a citywide historic preservation plan, it might actually come out that there's some neighborhoods that we really need to target as important residential neighborhoods for preservation and be more friendly and open to the idea of helping more residential homeowners to maintain their residential historic architecture. So I feel like the one way to get at that is having a citywide plan to answer that question.
That's helpful feedback. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heather. Roberta, if you don't mind going back to the list, the bullet point list of goals, I just have a very quick question on one of the items. Perfect, thank you. So in the first grouping, the second to last bullet, the one that says track leverage funding from other sources. Roberta, I just want to better understand in the context of whether it's repeat applicants or applicants sending in off-cycle applications. Do you have a system in mind, or to what extent can this be tracked? Because what I'm really curious about is that you may have a scenario where a certain new applicant comes in and requests, CPA funding, and that CPA funding may allow them to secure additional funding. And in many instances, we really don't know the outcome of those other applications, whether the funding materialized or not. And I suppose, it would be helpful information for us to know, especially if there's an off-cycle application coming in from the same applicant, or if they're coming back for repeat funding. So I would love to get your thoughts on that.
So I did add a question to the annual reports that we received about leverage funding from other sources. And I am not sure how consistently I got input on that number. But I did attempt to. So going back and asking the grantees to fill in that information on each project. I keep a running list of what leverage funding has been from each of the projects and try to periodically check in to confirm that those numbers are still accurate for each project.
Great, thank you, Roberta. And I think when it comes to leverage funding, I think that in general, in broad terms, this committee has been generally supportive of providing some sort of CPA funding allocation to help the applicant secure additional funding. And I think it'll just be helpful for us to have that information, just as a, if not usable for an off cycle or repeat applicant, just even as a data point. Because that also, in my view, magnifies the impact of securing CPA funds from from the various applicants that have participated in the program. So we are, I consider to be a supportive committee in that regard. So just a consideration for the future, nothing to do at this time. Great. Are there any other comments, items to discuss regarding this draft document, as well as the goals section? And I do want to assure the committee members that we will make this an agenda item for perhaps a future meeting, so that we could further discuss our progress towards these goals, but also see if there are any new ideas around new goals or modifying our perspective on the existing goals that may be warranted. So I certainly want to encourage a future conversation. And Heather, I want to thank you for bringing this up. I think it's always helpful for us to keep the goals and our program focus in mind here. Great. So Roberta, on this topic, do we need to I don't believe we need to take a vote or to adapt, or this is just with more or less informational and a conversational item. Is
Yeah.
that the correct understanding?
Information, conversation, and taking your feedback so I can make any final edits, but I don't need a vote to release the plan.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, and thank you for all your hard work and efforts. We truly do appreciate everything that you do for not just for this committee, but also for the community at large with respect to disseminating these important documents and informational pieces. So I'm going to switch over to the outreach subcommittee update topic. Just wanted to briefly provide some updates for the larger committee. So Roberta has sent over a contact list to the subcommittee members. We did have a meeting scheduled, but unfortunately, due to scheduling issues, we were not able to meet that day. However, I believe Roberta has set up a poll to gauge availability in the next few weeks or so. So I encourage everyone to complete it. And Roberta, once you have a good sense of what the best availability might be for the subcommittee members, I think we should definitely schedule that meeting and have a robust kickoff discussion. There's a lot to discuss and a lot of information that we've gathered over time. So that's the update that I have. Roberta, do you have any updates or any thoughts that you wanted to share as well?
Yes, I do.
Please.
Well, regarding the outreach subcommittee, I don't, but what I realized is that the agenda that was posted on the city's website has one more bullet point than the one that was in your meeting packet, which was CPC membership updates and administrative reminders. So I have some administrative reminders, as well as looking ahead at our membership recruitment for the year. So the first thing that I wanted to do was to invite Rose to share some news for the committee.
Yeah, I'm just wanted to share with everybody that I am stepping down from the committee. I've gotten to a point with work where it's just too demanding with time, and I'm ending up having to do more travel than I used to than I had before, and I feel like somebody else who has more time to commit should be in this slot, because this is a really important committee. I feel like we do really important things, and I just wanted to say thanks to everybody. I really have enjoyed this. I don't even know how long it's been, but that's it. So this will be my last meeting.
So,
Sorry, Roberta, please go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Thank you, Roberta. Rose, we really want to thank you for your commitment and service to this committee and the city of Somerville as a whole. You've been such a valuable and important contributor towards all the the many meetings that we've had, the many conversations we've had. And I on behalf of the committee want to thank you for everything that you've done. We certainly understand that other commitments come in the way, but your service has been remarkable, and again, we really wish you all the best for the future. And certainly you're welcome to at least join in our meetings, as an audience member, as a participant. Certainly you're welcome to join our hearings whenever time permits. But again, I, on behalf of the committee, want to thank you for everything that you've done, and we've benefited from your insights and expertise as well. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Roberta, please.
Thank you. So, considering that we are also going to be losing Laura at the end of this year, who is terming out of the committee, we need to begin a recruitment process for 2 committee members. So, I had already had in our annual agenda calendar to begin talking about the candidate search at our next meeting. So we will be looking at our next meeting. I'll share what the candidate search looks like. I think that we will be looking for at least 1 committee member to serve on a search committee. So please consider whether you might be willing to serve on a search committee with some city staff people, most likely, to review and interview candidates for filling both of those roles. And also, I hope that all of you will share broadly the application materials when the time comes, so that we can recruit a talented and diverse committee. And I have a couple of other things to share.
Sorry, I
ahead.
have just a quick idea on that, which was I was wondering if, because the annual report is so good, if you shouldn't go ahead and print one on nice paper or spiral bound or whatever and have it at the library as a kind of public document that people can see. And then maybe have a little insert in there about, that there's a search for new committee members or something like that. And who knows, that might reach some people that we haven't reached yet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heather. That's a terrific idea.
That is, yeah.
So a couple of other administrative things that I wanted to bring up are that we received a notification. I don't know if all of you are on the mailing list from the Community Preservation Coalition, but they sent out a notice that there's a CPA boot camp coming up, which gives information about the Community Preservation Act program. It might be it might be already something material that you're already familiar with if you've been involved for a long time. But if you still feel like you could use a refresher about the basics of the Community Preservation Act program, what it is, how it works, that is available. It's a remote meeting, and in the agenda calendar that I included in your meeting packet, there's a link to the Zoom registration in the right-hand column under the month of June. The meeting takes place on June 18 at 12 p.m. So you have the link to be able to join that meeting. And as I was helping to get everyone started for the subcommittee, getting the subcommittee prepared, I was reminded that we were given last year an email address that committee members should use if they are doing any kind of business for, sending any emails to anyone outside of the city regarding CPA business. That is used, nobody monitors that email address, but it's used simply so that the email is available in case of a FOIA request. So I wanted to give a reminder, and I put in the minutes, which I don't happen to have open, but I'll share that by email again with all of you afterward, and you can bookmark that email, what the address is that we should use in case any of you are sending emails related to CPA business. And then a final reminder is that we're required once a year to go to the state and submit an acknowledgement that we received conflict of interest summary of our responsibilities. So I will also send you a link to be able to go to the state. It just takes 5 minutes to go and click that you received the summary, so that you fulfill that requirement. I think every 2 years, you're required to actually undertake the training again. So some of you may be due to take the training for the conflict of interest training. So you can go to the state website. I think it will tell you when you're due for each of those and fulfill your responsibilities for the conflict of interest. And with that, I think that covers all of the reminders and updates that I had for you.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Roberta. I just want to highly recommend, with respect to the CPA bootcamp, I want to highly recommend registering for it, especially if you're new or relatively new to this committee. I think I found it really helpful when I participated, and I would encourage you to do the same. Time permitting, I plan on attending myself, just as a refresher. I think it's very insightful information, and I recall taking a number of notes in the past, so definitely recommended. Roberta, I wanted to ask you, perhaps this might be perhaps for the next meeting, but with respect to outreach, the tabling events or any other scheduling, are you planning on sharing that with us perhaps for the next meeting?
Yes. So also in the agenda calendar, we have listed on the agenda for next month, the Affordable Housing Trust will be coming to give a presentation of their annual report at some point during the summer, and I suggested that it happens next month. We need to look at a contract extension for the SHA for CD FY21 grant, and then to talk about our public outreach for the season. We can schedule out next month, and then to make a plan for the candidate search for new committee members.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Roberta. Having covered some of the key administrative items, I wanted to see if any committee member has any items that they wanted to mention just for the good of the meeting, for the good of fellow committee members at this time. Seeing none. So Roberta, I believe we have gone through the agenda. So if that is the case, then I would like to see if anybody would like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Everybody wanted to stay. No, I'll second it, actually.
Thank you. Roberta, would you mind calling roll, please?
Sure. Eric,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes. and
and Jahan.
Yes.
All right,
Thank you, Rose.
meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Our
Thanks,
next
Ian.
next meeting will be on June 26th, Wednesday, June 26th. I hope everyone has a wonderful Memorial Day weekend and to see everyone then. Thanks again. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Rose.
Bye-bye.
Bye.